We are here. It is 6 p.m. on August 6th. This is the official Newfane Select Board meeting, regular meeting. And we welcome everybody who are watching on television, and we welcome our guests here tonight. And I would like to call the meeting to order, and I need to say something before we begin. Hi, Walt. Jan, who is the person who does the filming of the video, has requested two things. Number one, when anybody wants to speak and you are called on, she would like you to identify yourself. Just say your name, and that will help her a lot. The second thing is that if there's a presenter who wants to speak, to present something, I'm going to show you where she would like you to stand, because last meeting it got a little complicated where she couldn't see her. So we've decided that if somebody's presenting and you stand here, then she can see the presenter plus all the people on select board and Shannon and the guests, okay? So if you're presenting, please stand here. Thank you. Okay. So, first item on the agenda is, does anybody have any additions or amendments to the agenda? Okay. Second item on the agenda is the minutes of July 16th, 2018, the regular meeting. Does anybody make a motion to approve?
So move.
Okay, second? Okay, thank you. Any discussion of the minutes? No? All those in favor of accepting, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, and that set of minutes is approved. We have another set of minutes, which was July 26th, and that was the Board of Liquor Control meeting. Is anybody who would like to?
Motion to approve it.
Okay, approve the minutes, and second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay.
I have to abstain because I wasn't in that meeting.
Okay, thank you. So we have one
And I wasn't there either.
Oh, you weren't there either. Okay, so it's still, we have a quorum of accepting. Thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda is road business, and the first one is road foreman's and road commissioner's report. Jay Wilson is not here tonight, so Chris has asked me to read the report. So it's road foreman's and road commissioner's report, July 16th, 2018. Number one, the Brookside signs are up, and Lafayette has replaced the rest of the road signs from the Dover line to South Newfane Village. Lafayette will hopefully be back in town in the next month or so to finish some more guardrail work. Number two, after having burglar alarms at the garage, I assume going off, 2 weekends in a row, I had the alarm serviced and a faulty sensor was replaced, as well as cleaning and replacing batteries and everything. Item number three, there was a meeting at Kenny Pond, and at this point it seems like everyone was on the same page for the repair of the dam. If all goes well, that might be repaired this summer. Number four, the radar sign has been moved to the entrance to Newfane Village on South Wardsboro Road. After 2 weeks, we will have some speed data for you. Number five, the elevator was serviced at the Williamsville Hall. And number six, we need to make a decision on the excavator. We had a lot of work planned out for the summer with it. Thank you, Jay Wilson. Yes?
Is this the report for today's meeting? Because it sounds very familiar to the last.
It is the same as last, I was just looking at that in the old minutes, it's the same as the last meeting.
But this is the one I got in the packet.
I didn't get it. No.
I didn't get one either.
I didn't get a report this time, because he's not here, he's on vacation.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and then Chris said, would you read the report?
I
So
thought
I
was
just
having
read
deja
it.
vu all over again.
Well,
I'll tell you what.
I'll give you a little report.
Yes, please
Verbal.
do.
They have been very, very busy with a little bit of rain we've had lately. And had a real problem with trees. They're coming down, trees that are perfectly alive, they're down for no reason whatsoever. They worked Saturday, 3/4 of the day, trying to get the roads. They were all passable. They were open, except when a tree came down. Then they were closed. And the guys worked real hard. And they overextended themselves, actually. I was pleased.
Well, thank you for that report, and you know, we have always noticed that the people on the road crew work very hard and in a very committed fashion for the whole town. So we thank you, Chris and Jay and all the gentlemen who do the hard work. I know that everybody on the select board honors these men, and I'm sure you do too, hopefully. Thank you very much. Okay, so so we don't have to have a
We don't have
discussion.
to accept it because we've already accepted it.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Next one is administrative assistant.
No,
No? Oh, I'm sorry.
Covered bridge.
covered bridge.
Covered bridge repair bid. Okay, so, we have the bids here, and I have to open the bids. Mark Pickering from V-Trans we were hoping he would come, but he was not able to come. So I'm going to open the bids, just read it quickly, and then we're going to have to make a motion to award it to the most qualified bidder and the lowest bidder. And then it has to be approved by V-Trans District 2. Is that correct, Shannon?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So, Gary, you want to read it?
Sure.
Or open them rather?
This is with deference to the Industrial Revolution, the specialization of work. We have a union.
Do you want me to read it, or you read it? Okay. Oh, I thought you were gonna read them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the plan.
Okay, give it back.
Do we award it, or do they have, does he have to look it over first?
He's got to look it over first.
Well,
They don't award it then?
We don't
Well,
award it tonight, no.
what I'm asking is that if you award it to the lowest qualified bidder as approved by the state, because we don't have, it has to be done before school starts, and they need to close the road. So we don't have time to wait for the next meeting. So if you make a motion contingent that it's approved by, that the lowest qualified bidder is approved by the state, then they can move.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Okay.
this is from Daniels Construction. Repair the deteriorated concrete back wall at the western end of the Williamsville covered bridge as specified. And the quote is for $14,500.
You want to look at it?
Yeah. Concrete back.
So this is A.R. Clarkson's on to repair the western end concrete back wall of the Williamsville covered bridge. To include, repair to include traffic control, saw cutting, removal and disposal of blacktop and concrete, replacing rebar form with 4 new concrete, backfill, compact, replace blacktop. And their bid is $12,250.
You say 12250?
12,250, yes.
Let's see.
This is from Renault Brothers. Quite a bit of detail. They're pretty much is like a work plan. I'll just read the bid amount, and that's $14,875.
Okay. So thank you for reading the bids, and what we are wanting to do is contingent on Vermont Transit, District 2, approving it. We would like to pre-approve this now for the lowest and the most qualified bidder.
I make a
And that
motion
seems,
to accept Clark's bid.
I'm sorry, what?
I make a motion to accept Clark's bid as the lowest.
Okay,
Second that.
okay. Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting A.S. Clark's bid of $12,250, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, the bid goes to A.S. Clark, contingent on approval of V.S. Trans. Thank you very much for the bids.
Must come to you, okay. So Mike's doing most numbers right now. We're just
Is that okay? You good? Okay, thank you. Gary, do you have the envelopes that we can?
I just.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay,
I can put them back together.
no, it's okay.
Got enough paper.
Okay, next is the administrative assistance report. Shannon, please.
The first meeting in September falls on Labor Day, so the board needs to decide if they want to reschedule for a different day, or what they want to do with that meeting.
Should we talk about it right now?
It's up to you.
Why don't you read the rest
Okay.
and then we can go back? Thank you.
Second item is on the reconciliation of bank statements. The auditors were in July and reminded us that we still need to find an outside person to do them. It's really hard to find somebody when you're paying between $10 and $15 an hour, and it only takes an hour a month. So the budget for this is $750 for the year. So if the board would consider paying somebody just a flat fee each month to do it, I think we would get someone more committed to stick with it. And then the last item is I'll be on vacation the last week in August.
Okay, thank you. So now let's go back to discussing if we are going to make another date for the beginning of September for our select board, or do we just not come until September 17th, Monday? So, anybody having a thought or opinion about this?
Well, the only opinion I have, I think that's a good idea, just to drop it. But what about the bills that have to be paid?
You do have a motion that you made in March to allow her to pay the bills in between.
I know that, I
so-
forgot that. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to make a motion of that, Chris? Or does anybody else want
Just to
to?
have one meeting in September.
Motion to have one meeting in the month of September, skipping September 3rd.
Right, and it would
Labor
be
Day.
on September 17th, Monday.
Correct.
Okay, so all those in favor of just having one meeting, because we are not coming in on Monday, the 3rd for Labor Day, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. So that's what we're going to do. If there's an emergency, and if we have to have an emergency meeting, we would do it, but right now, we're just planning to have one meeting, and that's on September 17th. Thank you very much. Was there something, do we need to make a motion and vote on the reconciliation of bank statements?
Yeah, that would be great if you wanted to pick a flat fee that doesn't
Okay.
go over the yearly budget.
Okay.
Then
Okay.
I think we have somebody interested, but I think it would be a lot more.
Well, the math on it is $62.50 a month. That's $750 for the year. So that's the budget
$62.50 a month.
amount.
Okay.
So to have somebody do it for an hour, I mean, I wouldn't do it for anything less than $50.
Right. That's what I was
And I,
thinking.
you know, that's part of my work.
Okay. So are you making a motion to accept that? Or to-
No, I make a
not
motion
amend?
that we hire someone for $50 a month, whatever time it takes them to do it.
Right, a flat fee.
A flat fee.
Oh, a flat,
Yeah.
okay.
Not hourly, but just a flat fee of $50. And generally, it only takes them an hour or so to do it.
So, second, okay. Any discussion on that? Where do we get the fee? Oh, wait, I see, it's just the budget. So we
Yeah,
we
there's a
would be coming in
reconciliation
below
budget.
budget,
Yep.
600, okay.
And we haven't spent that down at all since only in August.
Right, okay.
Okay.
So all those in favor of offering $50 a month for somebody to come in and reconcile the bank statements, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the ayes have it, and it's $50 a month. Thank you, Shannon, and thank you, Kelly, for the
Now, about this vacation,
I know, this is a big item, we have to have a long discussion.
you leave your cell phone number, right?
Of course.
We wish you all the fun in the world when you go.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is unscheduled members of the public. Is there anybody here? Okay. Can you please identify yourself, tell your name?
My name is Wayne SD. I asked the chair's permission to speak. I'm not a resident of Newfane.
Okay.
I'm sure everyone here knows that the primary election is on the 14th. What I wanted to emphasize is that only about 20% or less of registered voters vote on off-season primaries. And one point is math, that every voter is voting on behalf of four people who do not vote. And everyone should vote in their own interest, but they should also, as is Vermont way, consider those on whose behalf they are ultimately voting for. Second is, I want to remind people that
Excuse me for 1 second.
All of this, a long time ago.
Yeah, you can't, we know where you're going. Don't discuss the position if you don't know.
no, this is all about
Okay,
voting
all right.
generic.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, I wanted to be good about that. The other part is that a lot of people may not realize that the winners of the primary elections are ultimately become the office holder, and that is a reason people should understand that the primaries are an important part of the election process. Thank you for letting me speak.
You're welcome. And there is a sign outside, I think, reminding people. We have early voting. I did early voting today. And thank you for reminding us about that.
Yeah, thank you. It's good statistics.
Okay. Are there any unscheduled members of the public who would like to speak at this point? Okay. The next one is scheduled members of the public. And Peter, you're the first person on that. And could you just stand up, identify yourself, please?
I'm Pete Novick, and I live in South Newfane. I'm a Vermont resident.
Okay. And can I ask you before you come up, just before you start something, can I ask you what your purpose is for this meeting?
Yeah, this is informational, and I was going to do all that from over there.
Okay, but you gave a lot of information to us last time.
Yeah.
And we actually have set a very special date for you on September 24th.
24th, right. That's the date right now that's scheduled for
Yeah.
the site visit and for the public hearing.
Right.
Right.
So, what would be the reason that you want to come here tonight? Since that's all, we have made a special meeting for the Daniel Hill Roads Association.
Right, I understand that. So my purpose tonight is to take 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, and provide some information on something that I think would enhance what we said before at the meeting on the 16th of July, and provide the board with an opportunity to know more, and to what I'm going to talk about tonight, or what I want to talk about tonight, is risk management and risk mitigation, and that's within the context of this. And it'll only take 5 minutes.
You know what, I would like to, I don't want to be the only one who speaks, but we have a very busy evening. We have given you a lot of time, and we have set up a whole special evening for you. And so I'm not quite understanding. I would like to see if anybody else has a thought about this.
I didn't know what Peter was coming for tonight. And we're always interested in hearing, but I would encourage us to allow him to discuss risk management at the September meeting, whenever that is going to
Right.
make their presentation.
That's what I said, thank you. Any,
We have some items that are going to take place.
right. Is anybody else? Can somebody make a motion about this?
I'm a little confused on it. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm
You're choking.
a little confused on it.
Yeah, I mean, do you understand what we're saying? That you
Well,
have
I
been
understand
here-
the English I'm listening to, but what
Okay,
I don't
you have
understand
been
is.
here, you have given us a wealth of information about the whole situation with Daniel Hill Road, and we have been very respectful in honoring what you want to do, and we have listened to you. And we have set aside an entire evening of a forum for you on September 24th.
Right, I understand.
Yes, so tonight, we're very busy with a lot of other things on the agenda, and we were not expecting that we were going to have to deal with this before that evening. And we would like you to understand our point
Well,
of
excuse me though, I mean, he's already on the agenda. He's part of the agenda for tonight.
Right,
I mean, we've already discussed this in 3 minutes, it says it's gonna take 5. I mean,
okay, it's up
I mean,
to...
it's on the agenda anyway, that it's like it's not like he just
Yeah,
appeared.
but I did not, I personally, and I don't know if anybody else knew that he was going to give a PowerPoint presentation, isn't that what you
Believe me, it's 5 minutes, and it's informational only, it's not contentious.
Okay.
And it enhances, I think, and it's of use for the board to know, that's as simple as that.
Okay. What do you think, Joe?
I would
Well,
like to
he's-
see it covered on September 24th.
I'd like to keep all the information together versus
Yeah.
dribs and drabs of it.
I mean, I
He
would
is on the
prefer-
agenda, and we
Yes,
spent
and-
3 minutes, so I agree with Mike, but
I'd be done already, so.
Okay, so let's do 5 minutes.
That's right, that's exactly what it is, it's 5
Okay,
minutes.
5 minutes. I'm
So
good.
I'm gonna do 2 things. You have a paper copy of this. I did try to send this brief, so I don't know what the best way to do this. If I put this here and you put the slide, you put the camera on it, you think that would be good? Does that work? Maybe not. So thanks very much. My name is Pete Novick. I live in South Newfane, and we have asked the select board to, we have petitioned the select board, and they've accepted our petition to reclassify Daniels Hill Road as a town road. And we have a public inspection of the road and a hearing scheduled for September 24th. What you have in front of you is a paper copy of the slides that I have here. And if you turn to the second slide, this brief is titled, or the presentation is titled, 3 Roads in South Newfane, and it's dated August 28, 2011, which is 3 weeks and 7 years ago, when Tropical Storm Irene came through here and did about $2 billion worth of damage. So I'm on the second slide, and I want to just show you, in terms of risk management, part of that is to take on, if you take on the extra risk of taking our road over, there is a cost risk associated with that. On the other side, sort of the other bookend, is a cost risk of any catastrophic incident that takes place, such as typhoon or a hurricane, or in this case, the Tropical Storm Irene. The first picture you see here is the Dover Road looking east toward Williamsville. Off to the left of the camera is the Iron Bridge for Parish Hill Road. The next slide is a picture of the Dover Road looking west just after Penner Road, and that was the roughly 200-yard section that the Rock River took out. The next bridge, the next slide, is the view east, also at that same location, looking back toward Penner Road, and that's you can see about 12 foot of road material and foundation completely gone. The next slide is the entrance of what used to be called the Lynch Bridge, which was taken out by a boulder, which is still down off of Penner Road. You can go look at it. It's about 8 foot square, a boulder that took out one of the bulwarks of this bridge. The next slide is back looking at the Lynch Bridge, same thing, going to the east. And then the next few slides are Daniels Hill Road, which was a road that was totally devastated, the first 3 hills. And the next slide after that shows the damage again to the road, and the ditch there that you see is about 8 feet deep. Finally, there's another one where the water cut through completely and separated the two sections of the road. Another slide that shows the same thing. Then the last two slides here are the damage we got for Daniels Hill Road, a road that you'll come and see on the 24th. And that was the limit of the damage, an area of about 20 linear feet and about 4 inches. So the road was completely passable. We're very lucky, we don't live next to moving water, but this is a comparison that you can use based upon the storm, that from a risk management perspective, when it comes to a catastrophic event, what we would like you to take on board here is that as Daniels Hill Road, this is a low risk opportunity should the town decide to take the road over. So that's my presentation, subject to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
How'd I do on time?
You have 1 minute.
Thank you.
Anybody want to ask a question? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, yes.
Okay. And as we said, we will see you on the 24th.
Right. And I imagine there'll be some coordination on that as to where you're going to meet up there.
Well, we have the 4 o'clock site visit and a 6 o'clock meeting.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next item on the agenda for scheduled members of the public is Michael Mayer, Manitou.
They're waiting right outside, so I'll tell them that they're ready.
Okay, thank you.
Figured this all out.
I just wanted to mention that it's a bit challenging to hear back here with the air conditioning.
Shannon, should I shut it off a little bit? And then when it gets hot again, it's 88 degrees out tonight.
Okay.
And feel like 93 degrees. So
Okay.
if you want us not to pass out.
Yes, I don't want you to pass out.
Okay, good evening, Michael. And
Good evening, good to see you
Okay.
all. Thank you.
since we have more people who've come in, I am going to repeat what I said at the beginning of the evening. Jan, who is the person who is videoing this meeting, has requested 2 things. Number 1, if anybody is called on and recognized by the chair to speak, when you stand up, please identify yourself first by saying your name and where you live, just the town. And then secondly, if the presenter has a lot to say, we are requesting the presenter stands over there, sort of in front of the coffee machine and the black refrigerator. See there?
Right.
Because that will make it very easy for Jan to be able to film you or film whomever, get the select board and Shannon at the same time,
Okay.
and the audience. So those are the 2 requests from Jan, and we're going to follow that.
May I say one more thing? There are other people, when I asked Shannon when the likely time for our agenda item was to be, it was going to be later, so there are going to be others coming. So I don't know, do you want to break when they come? They may be scattering in. I'd ask them to come between 6:30 and 6:45.
Okay, well, we're going to continue with our meeting now, so,
Okay.
you know, sometimes one never knows how fast we go. Do you have something you want to say?
No.
Or an idea?
My idea was just to skip over to maybe Williamsville Hall Committee.
There's nobody
Okay.
here.
There's no one here for that.
Is somebody here from the Williamsville? I didn't see anybody, no. That would have been good. But since nobody's here for that,
You could skip to the other stuff.
we could skip to old business first.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first item under old business is emergency watershed protection program authorization. That's a long title.
It's a mouthful.
Okay. Shannon?
So I'm doing the work for the bank stabilization of one property that's eligible. And what they need is the board to approve naming me as the contact person and the person that will be signing the 3 million documents that need to be signed. And they require it in the form of this letter to be signed. So that's what I'm asking.
And you need all signatures?
All 5 signatures,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. And that's it?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to sign that. Then we have one more item under old business.
Or if Gary wants to read it,
Yes,
so people can,
it's quite chatty. I think you'll find it stimulating. This is the EWP program, Natural Resources Conservation Services from Colchester. This action authorized at an official meeting of the Newfane Select Board on the 6th day of August 2018 at Newfane in the state of Vermont. By authority of VT Statute 24, Chapter 37, the Select Board makes financial decisions for respective towns, including cooperative agreements, payment requests for the emergency watershed protection works. The person with signature authority for the town of Newfane is Shannon Meckel, Administrative Assistant. The following persons are designated for the following roles. Recipient program contact is Shannon Meckel. Recipient administrator contact is Shannon Meckel. And project director will be Shannon Meckel. Motion to appoint Shannon to these multiple positions.
Any second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor of appointing Shannon, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Shannon is appointed, thank you. And we'll all sign. Thank you. And Shannon, this is for you. Okay. The next item under old business is transportation alternative grant authorization. And you said that this has to do with the box culvert on
yes,
Dover
this is for the
Road.
box culvert replacement on Dover Road. It's very similar to the letter you just signed, naming a municipal project manager. We were waiting to hear from Winter Regional Commission if it were possible for them to do it rather than me. However, the cost associated with that came in at about $12,000. So I think it'll have to be me. So
Just to sign a few papers?
it's
Or you gotta
yeah, it's
redo them?
basically making sure that, you know, the grant is in compliance and that we have all the permits we need, which isn't something I can't do. It was actually the application they need you to fill out to be the municipal project manager was about that thick. And that was more cumbersome than actually doing the management. So it'll have to be me, but I don't have a letter ready for you yet because they just got back to me today that it would be that high.
But you've also got Jay and the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be fine. It really is, the application is worse than the actual project management.
So you're just saying that you're going to fill out that application?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But also she'll be
And she-
serving as a project
right, as a
manager.
Right, and I will be, and I'll need you to name me as the project manager.
Okay.
But because I didn't get the information until this afternoon, I'm just not ready, so.
Motion, please. Can somebody make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Shannon becoming the manager of this project, please say aye.
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 Any nay? Okay, Shannon.
Okay, so I'll eventually have a letter similar
Oh, okay.
as to something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I don't know how you do everything that you do. It's unbelievable to
It'll be
me.
done.
And not only do you do everything on time, but often way ahead of time, and everything's done beautifully. Thank you so much. Okay, so now, Either we can go with some correspondence, or we can start with Michael Mayer.
Let's get correspondence out of the way,
Okay.
just in case.
Okay, so there are a few
Because that's
items.
always the interest.
Okay. Actually, there are some things with correspondence, so we'll do this first. Okay. A few things that I have to do. The first one is from Alfred Weisbrick and Patricia Weisbrick on Rock River Terrace in Newfane, Vermont. And it says, summer 2018 to Marion Dowling Chair. Dear Ms. Dowling and Select Board members, although we were unable to attend Monday's meeting of the Newfane Select Board, we would like to respond to the discussion regarding traffic in the villages of Williamsville and South Newfane. To begin, please know that we understand the realities of speeding and are sympathetic to those properties who are bordering main roads. As we all well know, speeding is hazardous to everyone, including property owners, children, pedestrians, other drivers, as well as the offender. However, when choosing a course of action, all aspects of the issue need to be considered from the perspective, not only from the rights of citizens, but also from the perspective of citizen responsibilities. From the perspective of responsibilities, it is important to note that property owners in the villages have chosen, underlined, to live in houses that are very close to a main road. Having made that decision, does that entitle them to dictate how said main road is used? We have chosen to live on a private road, the maintenance of which is the responsibility of the landowners along our road. Having chosen to live here, are we now entitled to dictate to the town, maintain a private road? Would the residents of Williamsville and South Newfane be willing to pay for this service? Having said the above, we wish to put forth facts that need to be considered by the Select Board to offset some of the emotional arguments put forth by the residents of Williamsville and South Newfane. Number one, Dover Road connecting to Dover Hill Road in East Dover is the major thoroughfare from east to west, connecting Vermont's Route 30 and 100 north of Route 9. Number two, should we wait till we get seated? We don't have enough chairs for now, and I'm in the middle of just reading some correspondence. Can I just finish this and we'll try to organize everybody? Myra, do you want to sit down?
Yeah. Okay. You sit.
Number two, on weekdays, many of those driving on Dover Road are traveling for their employment. Number three, Newfane zoning laws specify building setbacks in villages to be 35 feet. Number four, some, if not many, of the homes in the villages are non-conforming lots, i.e. closer to the road than the required 35 feet. Number five, single-lane dirt roads in Newfane have a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour. For example, Wildwood Acres. 6, speed limits vary greatly, 25 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour along the Dover Road and the Dover Hill Road route, requiring motorists to constantly vary their speed. Few visual cues are present other than the seemingly random placement of speed limit signs, providing little reason to vary one's speed. Number 7, in the village of East Dover, Dover Hill Road has a speed limit of 35 miles an hour. Most of the remainder of Dover Hill Road has a speed limit of 50 miles an hour. Number 8, speeding enforcement results in fines of $100 or more with 2 points attached to the motorist's license. This punishment often far exceeds the severity of the infraction. Suggestion for residents. Since it is important to have safe villages, the residents of Williamsville and South Newfane can take a portion of responsibility for their own safety. Suggestions include, number 1, park vehicles in driveways rather than along the road. Visibility is compromised with the scattering of vehicles on both sides of the road. Next one, maintain and use existing sidewalks. It is always safer to walk on a sidewalk than it is to walk along the road. Install fencing in the front yard or around the perimeter of the property if small residents live there. This provides a visual cue for all to see. Maintain the property. If the village is aesthetically pleasing, motorists are more likely to slow down to enjoy the view. There are certain actions that the town of Newfane can take on behalf of the residents of the villages. Suggestions include: create specific signed places for parking through the village. Install no parking signs where appropriate. Repair existing sidewalk on the north side of Dover Road. Install the sign crosswalk midway through the village at the north sidewalk terminus. Install additional sidewalk on the south side of Dover Road from the proposed new crosswalk to the post office. Install signage for a 3-way stop at the following intersections: Dover, Grimes Hill, and Depot Roads, and then Dover Road and Baker Brook Road. Increase the speed in villages to 30 miles an hour to ensure consistency between speed limits across the spectrums of roads within the town of Newfane and to complement the speed limits of contiguous towns. And the last one in capital letters says enforce both speed limits and parking regulations. Since the town of Newfane has secured village status for the 3 town villages, it is possible to apply for grant dollars to help defray the costs of the aforementioned improvements. Also, when deciding on a course of action, it is our sincere hope the Select Board will consider all the facts so that all constituents will benefit. Very truly yours, Pat Weisbrich and Al Weisbrich. Okay. I want to get back to the agenda for a minute. 6:55 is when Michael Mayer's up for speaking, but Peter Novick spoke. So there is one more letter of correspondence. Oh, here. Would you like to read it?
Okay.
And that, this goes with it.
Okay. This is from the Brattleboro Development Credit Corp. July 27th, 2018, to the Newfane Select Board. Dear Newfane Select Board, once again, I'd like to thank the Select Board and voters from the town of Newfane for our ongoing support of Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies, aka is SEVEDS, CVEDS, I guess they say. Since 2012, CVEDS has sought funding from every town in the Wyndham region to support long-term economic development strategies that generate growth and prosperity. In 2018, 12 towns funded CVEDS, representing 75% of the Wyndham residents. That funding has added staff capacity, allowed us to increase regional programming and the collective impact on the region's economy. To address shared regional challenges like declining population and regional goals like improving wages and opportunities for residents, a shared effort above and beyond the capacity of any individual community are required. The investment that municipalities make through CVEDS demonstrates our region's commitment to creating a vibrant regional economy and healthy workforce. Municipal support for SEVADS leverages state and federal funding, as well as funding from the BDCC, that would be Brattleboro Development Credit Corp, to support strategic planning and program implementation for projects designed to help the region reach the goals and objectives of the 2014 Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, which is the CEDS, our Regional Economic Growth Plan. SEVADS leads regional economic development with strategy and insight, which means 1, connecting extensive labor market research and a Windham County hiring inventory to create career awareness and readiness programming serving the county's 4 high schools and 6 colleges. Research-guided development of services for small businesses and startups through Instig-8. Southern Vermont Workforce Center of Excellence, which includes the Southern Vermont Young Professionals, the BDCC College Internship Program, and the High School Career Awareness Program, Fast Tracks to Success. SEVADS developed a special capacity building program that supports local organizations and town officials in their efforts to improve community vibrancy. BDCC and SEVADS also work to secure new public and private investment for the region, whether it's federal funding to develop the 5-year Regional Economic Development Plan or new dollars to implement innovative programs, many of which have become statewide models. The region's award-winning strategic plan is nearly 5 years old, and SEVADS is currently partnering with people and organizations across Southern Vermont to create the region's 2019 CEDS sets. Public input sessions begin in June and will continue this fall. Information about this and the BDCC and SEVADS programs is available online at brattleborodevelopment.com and has recently launched a town bulletin that is mailed to each community on a regular basis. SEVADS is continuing to request municipal funding for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. In years past, you have asked us to petition or added us as an article. Thank you. However, this year we are asking you to consider placing us in your general fund budget. After many years of petitioning and speaking at select board meetings and town meetings, it is clear the majority of residents support this funding request. We would like to focus our limited staff time on gaining support in other communities in addition to the town of Newfane. We ask all towns in the Windham region to contribute towards this regional economic development effort at a rate of $3 per person based on town population. This is in bold. We are asking the town of Newfane to appropriate $5,178 based on the population of 1,726 to support continued implementation of SEVADS efforts. We look forward to scheduling a meeting with the select board in the coming months to provide a more detailed update on existing and new regional programs and projects. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to following up with the board on this request. Sincerely, Adam Grinold, Executive Director, Brattleboro Development Credit Corp., 76 Cotton Mill Bell, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Thank you for reading that. This is a pamphlet that comes along with the letter.
And that's our own Luke Stafford. I don't know
Yes.
why. He's got a funding which really helps.
So this is available for anybody to come and look at. Usually the correspondence is over here. And please come in at your convenience if you want to have more information. So those are the 2 important letters of correspondence. And right now, in a minute, we're going to call on Michael Mayer. But before we do that, I would like to say that we have a lot of guests here tonight, and thank you very much for coming. And it's great to see people come to meetings. The way we need to work with this, however, is in an orderly manner and a fair manner. So I just want to say what I'm going to need as a chair. And that follows along with what Jan said about filming. If anybody would like to speak at any time, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized by the chair. Then please state your name and what village you're in or town. And you'll have a few minutes to speak because we want to make sure that everybody has a chance. Now, the rules are for when we speak with a big group that everybody will have one chance to speak and no more until every single person who wants to speak has a chance. After that, it will be possible if somebody wants to speak again. So I'm just going to keep a note of everybody who wants to speak. If you don't want to speak,
How long can they speak?
I think is it 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
The most, 5 minutes the most, and we will be timing it, okay? And yes, and if you want to speak, I'm going to ask you to stand over there in front of the refrigerator and the coffee maker so that Jan, who's filming, will be able to
BCTV.
on BCTV.
Not for me.
Okay? So that's my request, and please let's all work together to have a good meeting and an orderly one with decorum. Thank you. Okay, Michael. I'm calling you first. So do you want to introduce yourself and then stand up?
Do I start by moving here?
Yeah.
My name is Mike Mayer. I am representing myself and also as a member of the Mayer family that owns 225 acres of conservation land in Williamsville, known as the Manitou land. I'm also working on behalf of and with the strong support of a number of people in this room who've been active with the Manitou Project and with this Green Burial Initiative, which has been evolving for some number of months now. Thank you for this time, board. It's great to see you again. When I sent you a brief note earlier that I understand Shannon distributed, it was to say that there were really two things to talk about. Number one, the disposition of the Manitou land, because the last time I was here, we talked a good deal about whether or not the land would be donated to the town. There was some ambivalence in that regard, and when the family looked at all of the evidence and the indications of interest that were coming from various quarters, what they determined was that really the best thing to do was to not give the land to the town at all, but rather give it to the nonprofit Manitou Project, which for 30 years has been stewarding the land. And in that way, the land would not be taken off the tax rolls. It would still be open. In fact, there would be special efforts made to make sure that it would be open as a community resource to everyone. So everyone I've talked to seems to agree that this is a win-win all around. Town doesn't lose any money. It still has the community resource. We could talk further about how you could advertise it as something that is yours in a sense, but without the liability. So that's really where we stand, and maybe I'll just stop there. I don't know if you have any further questions about where we're going with that.
Okay. Well, one thing I'd like to let people know is that when was your DRB meeting?
Last night. No, last
Thursday.
Last Thursday.
Last Thursday, the Development Review Board held a meeting, and Michael was there to interview and to be interviewed about his project. We have Gary Delius here, who's a member of Select Board and also a member of DRB, and he was there. And would you just quickly say what your purpose was for going there.
Right.
And then I'd like to have Gary say something too,
Okay.
if he wants to.
Yeah, my thought was I was just going to summarize my interpretation of what was going on and what the follow-up was, and then maybe Gary could indicate if there's any further thoughts, because I think it's very, very useful that Gary and Marilyn and I were all at that meeting and we were all taking our own.
Well, I was there as a citizen, not as a select board member. I
Point
was there
taken.
just to listen.
Yes, thank you.
Gary was a member of the board, and as you know, we're a select board with authority when we're here,
Understood.
but not at any time.
It was an animated discussion, and I think it was purposeful in many ways in that we were able to convey the value of it in a number of ways. And after the introduction, I'd like to go through the dot points that really were raised and are now articulated in the FAQ that I sent out. But in terms of what happened at that meeting, there was a general sense that this was a good thing, number one. There was also some concern that it was an important enough project that it be done right, and nothing should be done impulsively. And at the same time, there was sensitivity to the fact that there were, at the time, 2 families for whom services of a conservation cemetery were particularly important. Subsequent to that time, I'll just say this parenthetically, another woman with whom we've been working recently died. Her husband is here tonight and would like to say a few words. So in a follow-up note that I sent to...
No, if you could just come to the end of your introduction to this, because we do want everybody to have a chance. Then I'm talking about the DRB. What happened with you and the DRB?
What
and the
happened?
other things we can talk about.
What happened was, I understand, and Gary can speak to this, I understand that another meeting was called for tomorrow. I don't know if there were other discussions since that time, because 48 hours after the meeting, I sent David a letter saying, I think I have a way for you to be able to make a swift conditional approval, such as we were all hoping might be possible. And I'll just leave it at that, but I'm sort of referring to things that have no basis in understanding. So I'd like to be able to come back when Gary's through.
Well, yeah, I mean, go ahead, Gary.
Well,
Thank you.
And the DRB has not yet given its report. So I'll couch that by saying that we have not yet completely voted on this, although we feel very strongly toward the project. This would be the first green conservation cemetery in the state of Vermont. There's about 150 of these around the country. There's a great deal of interest in this type of movement. But just like in our deliberations for acquiring the Manitou land, there's a lot of moving parts. A lot of things that you say, oh, this is great to be the first, could be kind of scary too. And so we're trying to work through those issues now, and I think we're pretty close. As we had come to the position last week that we felt that it was okay to go ahead and give a conditional approval to this based on our approval here, and then conditions that will be set tomorrow night at the DRB meeting. So there's a number of things that we want to hear from folks about, things we need to be concerned about as we write these conditions, and to see how this can work for the benefit of everyone, not only for those people who are in the position of needing the services, but those people who must live in the area around those services, and how to make this the least negative impact on their lives. I think that's pretty fair.
I think that's a wonderful summary.
I would like to say something. You can time me.
Okay.
I have a question and a don't know the answer to it. And I don't know if you on DRB know the answer to it. But it's not very clear what authority the select board has at this point to move ahead and allow this project to start without first hearing what the DRB has to say. And the DRB, Development Review Board, has 45 days from last Friday, which was August 3rd, Thursday. You met on August 2nd.
We did.
DRB has 45 days to research this, to make sure everything is legal. And it was very clear at the meeting, and what people say in general, and Michael was kind enough to make copies of letters from the Congregational Church and other places in this area, that they feel very good about the idea, and there's a positive attitude about it. So this is not about how we feel about this or approve it. It has to do with legality right now. And one of the things that is very necessary for the board to do is to have our legal counsel read this the way they had to read it when you were first thinking about selling the land. And the counsel for the select board is Rich Carroll, an attorney in Brattleboro, and unfortunately he is out of town this week. But that is a consideration that I have, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels about this. And so I would like to ask the board.
I think if you don't mind, we should also ask Walt, who was attending that meeting and is our secretary, if his impressions were the same.
Yeah.
Walt, would you mind standing up, please, and just saying your name?
Yeah, I'm Walt Daddick. I'm a new kid on the DRB. I live on South Wardsboro Road, and I guess I've been on the DRB about a year plus.
So
New
would you,
guy.
And
would you,
Gary and Mike have said, they said it better than I could. That pretty much sums up where we are with respect to DRB.
Walt is doing yeoman's work for us, and he has become the pin which holds the trailer onto the truck. Without him, we've come completely apart. Now, to make sure you're also aware, there are already 2 bodies interred on the property.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of provide a little more context and make a very specific recommendation or request to the select board, understand in the context of your concern, Madam Chairman, if I can. But I don't want to.
well, I would just like to know from the, I don't have the authority to vote on anything or speak without the rest of the people.
I understand.
So, Chris?
The 2 bodies on the property are your family, correct or incorrect?
The first body is my mother, Pamela Mayer.
Yeah.
The second body was placed there on just after her death the 4th of July last year, Rupa Cousins. And a few days before she died, I approached the town clerk and said, I have somebody who's a very close member, well, very close to the family, but not technically a family member. Is it okay to bury her here? And the town clerk at that time, new on the job, looked at me and said, it's your land, you do what you want. Now, I saw her shortly thereafter, and we spoke, and she said, you know, now I've done a little more research and found that I was not as fully apprised of how that should have happened. And subsequently, we'll have to go a different direction if there's a non-family member wishing to be buried there. And that's what began the process that we are now culminating. So yes, there are 2 bodies, and at the time, we all worked with our best understanding, and in good faith, the decision was made without full understanding of really what the statute was. But there was nobody who was consciously aware that that was not entirely correct at the time.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to say, in addition, about the fact of having to present this to our council. And that's a very important thing that we need to do, because none of us know the consequences that could occur if the select board goes and approves something without making sure that this is a totally legal thing. This has nothing to do with the philosophy and the desires of people, but it is a major concern that we need the attorney to approve it, and that you have mentioned some statutes. Do you want to say something about the statutes?
Just that without the attorney really doing his interpretation of the statutes and saying, yes, that's exactly what you need to do, I think the select board it would be prudent to have them do that first, especially because there's a DRB proceeding
Yes.
currently ongoing.
Yep.
And if the board were to decide something tonight before the proceeding is over, I don't know.
I mean, one of the things, Michael, that you had said at the DRB meeting, and I was just there as a listener, but it sort of ties into what I'm saying now, is that there was mention of 2 to 3 people who are not physically well at this point, and that there was a desire that if sadly, when the time comes for these people to pass on, that even if this is not totally finalized, would there be permission to have an exclusion for those 3 people? And you were there, and so I'd like to know what you think of that.
Well, we felt like that because there was already a non-family member buried there, that to allow these 3 individuals who are currently in line to be able to be interred there would be acceptable to the DRB given the conditions, etc. And the legality is in place, etc. The important thing I think that we felt at the meeting was that we're the first in this state to do this.
Yeah.
So, Newfane is always first. It's something. So, it behooves us to take the time and do it right. If we need to make a consideration, we probably have the capability within us to do that, the authority within us to do that. But again, I think that not doing it with Rich's blessing and review would be just silly for us.
When you say "we," are you referring to select board or DRB right now? I need clarity on what you're saying. When you said that we can go ahead and do it, is it the authority of the select board or of DRB first?
Well, I think it goes back to the old saying, we must all stand together, for we shall surely hang separately. It's for all of us.
Yeah.
It's both the DRB as well as for the select board and the town itself.
So you are saying that the legal issues have to be taken care of
Yeah.
before?
Yeah.
Okay, so that then,
Before we give it our full approval. I
right,
think
but
that
you're
we can do
saying
the
that,
conditional approval.
okay, and what is,
And that's really, I don't mean to break in, but that's really what this meeting is about. I'd like to give enough of a background around how the amended bylaws of the Manitou project, which is the owner and operator of the conservation cemetery, that the bylaws that are now in force speak to, I think, all of the concerns that were raised, so that when Tuesday comes tomorrow and the DRB looks at those, they'll say, this really does speak to our concerns, therefore we are now supportive of the conditional approval for interment of 3 individuals. 2, by the way, have died. And we have representatives of each of those families with us tonight, and I'd just like to, if we run out of time because of everything we're talking about here, all the time we're taking, I think it's important for us to be able to hear from each of them as well.
okay, Mike?
I guess what I'm wondering, like, how many, you got a certain amount of acreage set up for this thing, and
I
mean,
have,
like the whole burial thing is like I think like a cemetery. Are you going in and clearing the land to make a cemetery, or are you
May
And you
I,
just go within the trees and how deep they get buried and.
may I approach the table
Yeah.
and give you each a copy of?
I think we have it. Are you giving
Well,
us a map?
I've given you, I sent something out via Shannon, but I want to make sure that you have an updated version for each of you. We're
We
only
just got
asking,
this.
it is that,
Yeah.
okay, so you have that. I didn't know whether you have
You
it,
wanna
so
look
that's
at it?
great. What you don't have, and I'll just rip this off so you each have a picture. This is, and I should have included this before, but this is what it looks like. We are not clearing land, as Mike was supposing might be the case. We're actually taking a woodland glen, doing selective clearing of saplings, protecting the specimen trees that are indigenous, and making an environment that is most supportive for those trees. And that's why, when describing what this process is, conservation cemetery, 90% conservation, 10% cemetery. And when you look at that trench, that hole in the ground, that's what we're doing. In addition to that, we are doing selective clearing, taking out all the invasives, and making sure that we're improving fauna habitat, flora habitat. The support letter that you got from Bill Kunther, representing the state forester, if you haven't read it, can I just read portions of it? It's very glowing. It's saying, this is perfect. This is what you should be doing.
I mean, as
Okay.
I said before, the letters that you sent to us, all those letters are from people, the church and Bill Gunther,
Yeah.
are very excited about the concept and the idea of having this in place one day in Vermont.
I was
Certainly
speaking to
in
Mike's
Newfane.
point, really, just in terms of what are you going to be doing to it, and it's really maintaining the woodland setting is the answer.
Well, like,
And-
as I say,
and-
most
and-
cemeteries, you know, like, are marked out with a fence or something. So is there something like that, or just walk right through the woods?
If you look at the map, there's an existing woods road and there are existing trails, all of which will be made wheelchair accessible. So the Vermont statute reads that when a nonprofit cemetery association is creating its project, it doesn't have to abide by the rules which govern other cemeteries. So there are no fences. There are, of course, they're not outbuildings, they're not vaults. There are a lot of things that distinguish it, but it's essentially maintaining the existing habitat. And in our case, that's already defined by the conservation easements of the Vermont Land Trust and the woodlot management plan established by George Weir under current use.
Because I think what I was more like thinking about too is, like you said, you was gonna keep the rest of the property as you got it now for.
That's right. Yeah, this is only for approximately 2.5
No, that's why I was
acres.
just wondering if it was kind of marked out as like a cemetery's, you know, even like the green. I'm not against it, but I'm just saying it's,
Well, this is to be discussed. The Bristols who were at the DRB meeting were saying, well, we don't want neon signs saying, you know, come here, we got slots, we got this. No, it's not that kind of a recreational facility. I said, well, you know, we could just have a Manitou sign, just the way it is. We don't have to advertise it. There are other people, some of whom were in this room, were saying, well, actually, if it's a conservation cemetery, we ought to be able to let the world know that that's what we have. We're completely open to that. What we're trying to do is make sure that the process for determining how it is offered to the community, how it affects everybody in the neighborhood, that there's consensus around how we do it. That's a priority for us.
Well, I like to learn a little bit more. I think it's a great idea, and so I guess, you know, if you have a presentation, I guess.
I
we
do.
should- Yes.
Have we done the introduction that we need, Carolyn?
Can I just ask how long your presentation is going to be?
Under 10 minutes?
Under 10 minutes?
Yeah. I mean, I just want to make it, I'll make it as quick as you want.
Okay.
It really depends on how much material you want to know.
Okay.
I was thinking that I'd like to be able to run through this Q&A quickly. What are the frequently asked questions that most people have? And that way, I think you could better understand, you know, get your arms around it, number one. And then number two, what are the bylaws that speak to some of the specifics?
Okay.
And that actually goes to all of the statutes. All of the statutes are spoken to in the bylaws. We've done our homework with this. And again,
We received that copy from
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much you have got.
Can you show us?
Yes, you do have that.
Yes, okay.
However, the bylaws were not part of the package I sent you.
I got it, oh, and I,
Did you get it from Marilyn?
yep,
Marion,
I'm sorry. Mary.
that's okay.
yes.
How many times have I
I know.
misspoken?
I actually
Smack me.
forwarded it to Shannon this morning, the
Okay.
bylaws, because I didn't know that if she had them or not, and so.
Well, I'm going to ask you then, shall I review with you what the FAQ says, or do you not need to do so?
I would say that since we got these,
Public information would be great for everyone.
well, I don't know how much everybody knows in the audience, so I'm gonna just ask a general question. Have you had your own meetings with Michael or in your community about this? For example, these two people are nodding yes. So,
Well,
It's a very diverse community.
This is
actually.
for all of Newfane, so I think it should be documented.
Can I take 5 minutes to run
Sure.
through it very quickly?
absolutely.
Higher Ground Conservation Cemetery is the name of this green burial project, located 300 Sunset Lake Road, Williamsville. Who owns Higher Ground Conservation Cemetery? The nonprofit Manitou Project, generally known as Manitou. Does Manitou own the land on which this conservation cemetery lies? It is leasing between 2.5 and 3 acres from me, Mike Mayer, whose house and land is bounded by what is known as the Manitou land on 3 sides and Sunset Lake Road. What is the distinction between the Manitou Project and the Manitou land? The Manitou Project is a nonprofit. The land is 225 acres that Manitou has been stewarding for 30 years, running programs on, and Manitou will actually be acquiring that land this month. How many green burial sites will there be? Up to 80, we're hoping. That all depends on the number of qualified sites that we test and are found to be qualifying. Will they happen gradually or all at once? Gradually, average 2 per month. No more than 4 in any one month, obviously fewer in winter with the hard freeze. Will the numbers increase if demand is high? Our goal is not to optimize numbers, but to optimize the experience. To create a model that others can readily follow and replicate in towns and communities locally and throughout the state of Vermont. What's the process? If you're interested, you contact Manitou, request information, become familiar with Caring for Our Own. We have some representatives caring for our own in this meeting today, a group that meets informally in Brattleboro monthly to support those wanting to explore this possibility. How do I learn more? I've got contact information for me personally and the Manitou number. And a technical question, can this property become a conservation cemetery under state statute and town zoning? And I'm going to read the technical answer. It'll take a moment, but here it is because it's very important. The property is located in a resource district where town zoning doesn't list cemetery as an allowable use. However, outdoor recreational facilities do qualify under supplemental district standards should they be limited to, quote, an open space or land-based recreation uses, i.e. public land, protected wildlife habitat, recreation trails, which are compatible with a forested environment. That's language from the town bylaw. That description also meets criteria for natural burial grounds allowed by the state of Vermont, and there's a citation there of what that is, and accurately depicts the subject property. So conditional use permit is under consideration by the Town Development Review Board to allow the proposed conservation cemetery for final approval by the Town Select Board. So that's the big picture. The immediate picture is, can there be conditional approval for these first 3 families who are represented here tonight, recognizing that if the owner-operator of the cemetery, the Manitou Project, through its bylaw, is appropriately honoring all of the statutes, which it does. So I'd just like to quickly run through the bylaw. Its mission, definition of green burial. I don't know, this is all a level of detail which may not be important for public record, but may be important for you. So I'm going to ask you now whether or not I should actually go through that.
I have a question though before
Go
that.
ahead.
When you say conditional use permit, what specifically are you asking for? Why do you have to ask for a conditional use permit?
That is the technical language before the DRB, which is the process. Do you want to speak to that, Gary?
The DRB has a number of mechanisms that they can use in considering piece of property. There's the variance, then another way is conditional use. So it's just a mechanism that we have to try to work with property owners and help them to utilize their land and do what they want to do with it. In most cases, you know, the property complies, and we either have to do a variance or it is qualified a certain way.
Well,
This is slightly unusual.
It doesn't qualify because why?
There's not a specific regulation in our zoning bylaws which say that this is a permitted use, but it's also not a restricted use.
So it's just in the question mark.
Yes.
It is not listed. That was the point I was
But I
Yeah.
think it was, I could see that it's listed as a viable use of land if it's recreational.
There is an existing statute which would include everything that he's talking about now, without having to go to additional use. And that would be an existing state statute which sees the land as being used as a recreational area. And since one of the underpinnings to their concept is that people will be encouraged to use the land, and to be able to walk through it and to enjoy the rest of the Manitou property, of which this will be a part. If we went out and looked at it, you wouldn't know you were there. It's very, very quiet, very peaceful, very natural. It's had some of the thatch removed underneath, but most of it, it's just as you would find it in the woods.
Well, I mean, a lot of people use cemeteries for recreational uses. I do all the time. So, I mean, I don't see that as a real big issue, but I guess as far as having a burial on an existing recreational designated property, there's a question.
It's a resource district, yeah. It's in the resource district. But it isn't allowed use in the resource district.
Can I clarify that? It has always been a conservation property.
Right.
And the
Or has.
proposed use changes that not one bit. It simply means that you can periodically put holes in the ground like you see in order to inter loved ones. And in fact, it enhances the recreational capacity because the existing trails and wood roads, the ones that are the main connectors on this is a small amount of land, 2.5 acres we're talking about, will all be wheelchair accessible.
Right.
So suddenly, we don't have that anywhere in our region, wheelchair access trails in nature that I'm aware of.
And not in cemeteries.
Well, you don't have
I'm
that
not
in the
saying
woods.
anything bad about it. I'm just saying that's a really nice to have that.
It's a really interesting blend, and that's why this hybrid use is taking so much. Well, it's happening. It's a movement in all 50 states. There are 175 of them, like I say, around the country.
I guess just my question is why, because of it's been used as a recreational and now it's being considered as being used, this small piece of land, as a burial site, it changes that use of that 2.5 acres or whatever.
It merely fits in that portion of the regulation.
Yeah,
Fits.
and it expands capacity. It expands the recreational capacity for people to actually come and do things they wouldn't have done before.
Yes.
I have a question about what you're talking about with outdoor recreational facility, which is in your packet of, the burial and conservation cemetery background. And it's on the bottom, the last paragraph on page 2, if anybody wants to look this up right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to read just this part of it. And it says, even in conventional cemeteries, statutes don't restrict the use of cemeteries for responsible recreation, though dog exclusion is common. Today, many cemeteries are reclaiming their role as gathering places for events beyond funerals, with movie screenings, plays, dance performances, educational and nature events on cemetery grounds. It is not a stretch at all to see how Conservation Cemetery meets the description of, quote, outdoor recreational facility as outlined in the Newfane zoning bylaw, being, quote, limited to open space and land-based recreation uses, forest, protected wildlife habitat, recreational trails which are compatible with the forested environment. Now I'm reading this because as a listener on the DRB, at the DRB last week, there were concerns by some abutting neighbors about what kind of recreational use there might be. And I do know that you were talking about walking, hiking, quiet activities, but I did not hear anybody talk about, or people not having concerns that it could be movies, dances, music.
Can I clarify this? It says, many cemeteries are reclaiming their role as gathering places for events beyond funerals. That's the other 150. That's completely not what we're doing. This was simply referencing the fact that creative use of this.
Okay, but yes, I understand that, that you're saying this, but I think you have to be very, very clear about what kind of recreational use there will be on this property, particularly given that you had butters there being very concerned about this.
So, Madam Chairman, we went back to the bylaws to look exactly at that question, and under operations, I'm going to read that.
Okay.
So this is the fourth paragraph under draft guidelines of bylaw for higher ground conservation cemetery dated August 3rd, 2018. Operations will include development of a cemetery plan that meets applicable state statutes and local zoning guidelines, identification and preparation of grave sites consistent with the cemetery plan, definition of green burial, state and local ordinances, operating procedures established by the board, and maintenance of the natural burial grounds consistent with conservation burial principles and board policy. The board will establish administrative procedures to support fiscal operations, staffing guidelines as applicable, terms of client selection, guidelines for working, communicating with clients, guidelines for outreach, communication with neighbors, the community at large. It goes on to say this is the rate at which we're going to be doing burials. The function here is really about burials. Other guidelines that follow, burials only during daylight hours, so there's no outdoor lighting, no outdoor, no outlets, no signage other than currently evident from the street that displays Manitou on wooden signs at the entrance. Everything is really focused on the burials and the quiet recreation. There could even be another section that says there will be no softball, no catch, no frisbee, no movies, if you want, but that's sort of understood by us. There's nobody in this room that had even contemplated that. The closest thing is sacred circle dancing that I'm going to ask one or two people to talk about if they like, but that's something that is, a very important part of the practice of
So I came from upstate New York in Saratoga Springs, and we literally took a historical gravesite and brought to life the people that were buried there, the founders of the area, and created a play. So it was well received, and I don't see anything wrong with it. And it wasn't, if you had to bring lighting in or whatever, but it was, that's a part of art. That's what.
I love the idea, and if we were to ask people here, do they like the idea? I see some smiles there.
So I encourage it.
I'm just going to keep coming back to the point. We want to do this in a way that the community embraces 99.9%. And even our butters who are saying, hey, we want this to happen, but we want it to happen right. So do we. And that's why they now have a copy of the bylaws, all the details they didn't have. And so I'm thinking that they have the support, and they're not here tonight. So I think what we have here is nothing but consensus around this.
Well, the select board received copies of a letter that was handed in today by one of the abutters.
Oh.
And if you don't mind, maybe I'll read it right now. This is to the Newfane Board of Selectmen from Gordon Bristol, trustee of Gordon and Jean Trust, Jean Bristol, trustee of Gordon and Jean Trust, dated August 6, 2018, and the subject is burial ground. Honorable ladies and gentlemen of the board, this note is a follow-up to our personal appearance before the DRB board meeting on August 2nd, 2018. Background. Let me begin by stating that Jean and Gordon are in favor of alternate means of burial and have no problem with an alternate burial ground / cemetery in Newfane, as long as the entity is properly constituted and meets the criteria of all state of Vermont statutes requiring disposition of human remains. Both Jean and I have served on the board of the Brattleboro Area Hospital and are sympathetic to alternate means of dying and burial. Opinion: that notwithstanding, we object to your approval of the currently proposed facility on the land of Michael Mayer. We as a community are getting vague and contradictory indications as to what is exactly happening and going to happen at the property of 300 Sunset Lake Road. Herewith some of the initial confusion. First, the proposal is on private land. Feel this is contrary to Vermont statutes. Second, there is talk of the High Ground Conservation Cemetery. We have no evidence of this being a formulated 501c3 with proper bylaws. Third, there is some vague reference to Manitou project. When convenient, the reputation of Manitou is inserted into discussion, but I see no structural legal document connecting Manitou to the higher ground or the Mayer personal property. 4, there is reference to adoption of a plot plan after substantial completion of the cemetery. This is contrary to Vermont statutes. 5, the author of the document's continual interchangeable language: green burial, natural burial, conservation. The interchanging of terms make us suspect. 6, there was talk at DRB meeting of lands associated with Manitou. That project is in Vermont conservation land and subject to Act 250. All will be triggered upon with affiliation with this private land cemetery. History. This site has a history of inappropriate burial. Mrs. Mayer was properly buried, and we are pleased she can enjoy her land. The person last year appears to have been buried contrary to Newfane laws. There is currently a person, quote, on ice in Dartmouth, deceased, that has been promised burial here. Very presumptuous. There appears to be a person pending death who has been promised burial here. Again, presumptuous. The history of this site to be presumptuous and contrary to town law and state law is bothersome to use when we see the volume of burials expected going forward. Summation. We need to know as a community that this property is abiding by all laws and statutes. Town council should review all bylaws and subleases and agreements to ensure the, quote, arm's length rule of independent cemetery. To do this planning in advance of approval is critical to ensure that no bodies are disposed of illegally, which will bring the attention of the Attorney General of the state and to all local rules are followed legally to ensure no town legal intervention. Also, there is the possibility to neighbors appealing decisions felt contrary to the state and local laws. Summation 2, this is a great project. It has to be done correctly. We are dealing with deceased people We, the living, are here to protect them from wrongdoing. We must begin now and not at a catch-up phrase. Kind regards, Gordon and Jean Bristol. So that's the letter.
Thank you for reading that. Point by point, we could speak to every one of them. And it's unfortunate that the Bristols have not actually asked for the kinds of backup that they allege to be unavailable, because they are available. Everything has been done by the book. I started at the beginning of this meeting saying how it came to be that Rupert Cousins is buried there. It was all done in good faith. To say that it was not according to statute, I gave the explanation as to how that came about. Every other point can be dealt with very specifically. I've done so in the bylaws, and I regret that the Bristols aren't here to actually have that discussion, because to put it out in that way is a roadblock that I think is unnecessary. And they're all good points, but they're uninformed. I'll repeat. They have not asked for that information of me, a neighbor. I would have provided it, and we don't have to use this kind of bureaucratic means to stop something which they say they want. And I would like to take their statement at face value. So I think there is a way to do it. There is not one point there that holds, that is a problem. And I'm willing to speak about each one of them individually if you'd like.
Well, I'd like to open it up now to some visitors. If anybody would like to say something, please raise your hand, and I'd be happy to recognize you and you can speak.
Can I do some sorting here? Because every one of these people has something important to say, but can I, in the interest of time, may I ask that the individuals who are representing families who have not been promised anything, but who have been working with us closely to try and achieve a common goal. So, Robin, would you like to start?
Sure. My name is Robin Risky. I live in Brattleboro, but I work throughout Windham County doing public health work. And I'm here tonight to represent a friend in Brattleboro, Margaret, who worked at BMH as a nurse. Actually, Ken worked with her at BMH, and then she also worked as a hospice nurse and did home health care out here in the Newfane area. Margaret was diagnosed with cancer 13 years ago and has had 7 metastases. She's 53, a mom of an 18-year-old. And we know that death is not an easy thing to talk about. It's the one thing that most of us don't plan, right? We plan our vacations and holidays and visits, but we don't plan for death. And one of the things that Margaret has wanted, she also was a steward at Manitou and had a trail that she managed out there for years. And one of the things that she has wanted from the get-go was a green burial, and was very excited. We were all at Rupa's funeral a year ago, and she has planned it all out, and I am her advanced care director, and there's nothing more that she would want as a final wish. She is getting very tired. She was thinking about stopping her treatment a couple of weeks ago, and I was kind of joking with her and said, I don't have any place to bury you, so you have to stay alive. And she's very, has a lot of humor and love for the land, and this is how we buried people we loved 100 years ago. There's nothing radical about it, and it's really an honor. I think it's quite a moving thing that this is something that people can be doing, and that Manitou is offering this, and that you have the ability, even if in the short run, Margaret is still alive today. I can't say how long she'll be with us, but I would really love to be able to at least have her conditionally have the ability to be at Manitou.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to?
Kipton, could you say a word, please?
My name's Kipton Dukesbury. I live in Brattleboro. My wife, Deborah, died around 1 o'clock on Friday. But a week before, when it was clear we were entering hospice, that is, several major organs were failing, because we had talked about and expressed long ago and ongoing that her wish, because of her love of gardening, nature, and those things, was she came from the elements. We were all part of it. She wanted, her wish was to be able to go back to them, not lost, sealed up in some sort of box and whatever. And so it was fairly short notice that I sent an email to Greenville, Vermont, and they eventually referred me to Mike. And so we've been basically talking sort of for the last week. And at the moment we're set up so where her body's on ice, and it can be for a while. So I'm thrilled, and I think she would really be, to know this kind of movement and ability is really, can become a reality for pretty much anybody eventually. And one of the things that appealed to me, and I'm sure would have to her, was that the project, any costs incurred by us to go forward with it, some of it goes to just further developing these ideas, passing them out, just making them more, as you said, in line with statutes, or helping statutes. It's helping the whole notion grow. She was a quiet person, but anybody who in the last 19 years Brooks Memorial Library will probably know who she is and who I'm talking about. So, and that's basically what I said in my email when I made the first contact with Greenville, Vermont, that I was looking for information. All right, we're now at this point. Thank you.
Kipton wrote a beautiful letter, which is in your packet.
I would like to offer our condolences to you, and I think you're very brave to have come out here tonight, and I can imagine that it's a very difficult time for you, and we pray for you that things will work out, and thank you very much for being here.
It's my pleasure, and thank you.
Could I ask Christina, could you say a word? You might want to come forward so that the camera can see.
I'm Christina Weeks. My mother, Gudrun Weeks, died unexpectedly. She has been involved with the Manitou project for several years in her own way, enjoying the land there, and hoped to be buried there. But as I said, she died unexpectedly. So here we are, hoping that this can go forward for her to be able to be buried. Sorry, I don't have a lot of words right now.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you very much.
Could I say one thing?
Sure.
I know that everybody is kind of conflating Manitou in this project, and there's reason for that, because Manitou is the owner-operator of the Conservation Cemetery, but this is being done not on the Manitou land, it's being done on 2.5 acres that I own personally. And the reason why that works is Manitou, as a cemetery operator, will have a perpetual lease on that land. I'll probably end up giving it to them completely on their own. But that's why when the Bristols talk about it automatically triggers Act 250, that's entirely false, because as I had a very detailed conversation with Act 250 District 2 Representative Stephanie Giles last week. She said, "You're under 10 acres, you don't need to talk to me. It's delightful hearing about your project. I want to hear more about it. This sounds wonderful for the state. I hope it goes through." Act 250 does not apply. So again, point by point, I could go through their remarks, and they're just uninformed. So the way, let's be really clear that this is a model. It's not designed to explode out into thousands of burials up on 200 acres. No. It's a model that other families, other nonprofit conservation organizations can use as a way for them to do the same thing. And if we can do it right here, then as I know some of the DRP people were saying, my gosh, we really can be leaders here. And from a statutory standpoint, there are no hurdles. And I can speak to that with pretty strong conviction. And I wish there were an attorney that I could sit down with, because we've been advised by attorneys as well. And we could cite chapter and verse of every statute to say, here's how we deal with it relative to depth, relative to setbacks. Again, I don't want to get into detail of what the Bristols were talking about unless you wish it, but I can go point by point and do it.
You know what? I just have the responsibility to read a correspondence the same way as I feel a responsibility to let people in the audience speak.
I have a question. What do you know, since you've involved yourself with knowing a lot about cemeteries now, is what was the history of why families could not bury their members on their properties, and they had to go into a cemetery, you know, that was designated as a cemetery? Is there some reason, or does it still exist that you can still bury on your own property?
It's very strongly supported that can be done in the state of Vermont, that you can bury your own family members on your land. You don't have to go through quite as many administrative steps as you do when you're doing it through a nonprofit association such as we're doing.
Yeah. But at any time, if that land is to be sold, and this came up at DRB, it has to be recorded that there is a burial site on the property. It has to show it on the deed, and you have to disclose it.
And there needs to be public access to it.
Yes.
For appropriate.
So you would have
family members.
you would have to have an easement,
Yeah.
allowing easement for
Right of way.
right of way
Yeah.
for people who want to visit that site.
Oh, yeah, because it could change it.
So
Yes.
just historically, the state of Vermont has actually been pretty good about moving this direction. It just hasn't taken this step yet.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, Steve Lee, I have a couple of questions. One, will the 2.5 acres that you own be separated from your own property? And why are you not doing it on Manitou property?
I'll start with the first one. It's very much easier to do it on a smaller amount of land. Number one, you don't have, I think I have 18 abutters on the Manitou land. You know, they're the camps along Williams Road, and there are a bunch of friends down in the village. You know, the Manitou land is quite expansive. And so that would just be more complicated. But more to the point, because that would be more than a 10-acre parcel owned by an entity, that would immediately trigger Act 250 review. Now, we're not scared of Act 250 review, other than it's going to take many months. So that's the first answer. And then, does it need to be segmented out with surveys and all of that? Probably, but initially what we can do is we can identify the land by some existing markers. I'm pausing because I want to make sure we're doing this right. For instance, there is a designated portion right now that is a ½ acre where all of the first sites are occurring. So that's already designated very clearly by a survey that was done a few years ago. Just looping back to one of the points that the Bristols made, the statute reads that for an active cemetery, you need to plot exactly where the sites are. And under a conservation cemetery through a nonprofit entity, Conservation Cemetery Association, that could be done by GPS. That's not true for more conventional cemeteries. So what that means is all of what we're looking for these first three, they'll be identified by GPS and very much specifically identified within a surveyed area. So in that way, the statute is completely ironclad. What is identified in the map, and the Bristols received this, so it's too bad they didn't look at what they saw. The future cemetery sites would be as those move into use, they would also be following the same rigorous identification, registration, and recording, so that you're following all the rules. Maybe that's too long an answer for the short questions you asked, but we are thinking about these things. Phase 1 is up to 10, 12 sites in this area that is currently where Pam and Rupa currently are, that is already surveyed. And section 2 would follow after the broader conditional use permit is approved by the DRB. So that's completely in keeping with what the statute reads. And again, I'm getting into detail, but this is what the lawyers are going to be asking.
I just would like to say something. Earlier tonight, we were running ahead of time, and you asked if we could wait because you wanted other people to come. It's now 10 to 8, and on the agenda it says that between 6:55 and 8 o'clock we have also people who are representing the Williamsville Hall Committee. So I would like to make sure that they have their time to speak. And so one of the things that I would like to propose right now, and we can discuss it as a board, is that since there is another meeting tomorrow with DRB, where this is going to be discussed again, and to see if and when you're going to come, the DRB is going to, and Walt also. I think it's important that, as we just said, we don't even know what authority right now the select board has. We have to have the legal counsel look at it, and I think I would like to pass it on for the work to be continued tomorrow night at DRB, and then we will continue with our responsibilities for this evening. So does anybody have a thought about that?
No, but we have to find out the legality of it.
Right.
That's the big thing.
Yes.
Then we move on from there.
Right.
I have one other question. Your sites would not have any markers on it, just by GPS?
They would have, the bylaw state that just a simple stone chosen by the family, a field stone, a quartz, something of their choosing, and then a half-inch thick, 10 by 14-inch plaque, ceramic, while it's still moist, little stick, engraves a few words. In the case of Rupa Cousins, the words are, "Praise well with others, Rupa Cousins, July 2017." Something very simple, not the full, tombstone data etched in marble or granite. So that would be a way for families to be able to track and remember that.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question just
Yes.
before we move on?
Can you introduce yourself?
Yes,
please?
I'm Fred Taylor. I'm the president of the board of the Manitou project, so I work very closely with Mike and others on this project. And my question is, given the fact that I hear a strong sense of support for the request for a conditional approval for the 3 families, the 3 people who have either already died or are close to it, would it be possible then to pass it to the DRB for their conditional approval when they meet tomorrow night? Given the fact that I hear a strong sense of support from many of you, and I really appreciate your careful questions. As president of the board of Manitou, we're committed to working carefully and diligently to develop the bylaws, to work with you. So my question is just, it would mean a lot to us and to the 3 families involved if this conditional approval could be passed on to the DRB for your meeting.
We said that already, because first of all, as a select board, we really need to be responsible and have the council, our council, go over all of this, because we are on our own, I don't think, feel comfortable in authorizing anything right now. And so we know that the DRB is meeting tomorrow, so I can't promise what they're going to do. I can just say that there's going to be continuation of this discussion and thinking of the project tomorrow night.
My concern was that after the DRB discusses it tomorrow, I didn't get a clear sense of whether they were authorized to give conditional approval or not.
Well, first of all, they're just two people from the DRB.
Right.
We will make a recommendation. In this particular case, it has to then come to the select board. We're kind of behind the game and putting the cart a little bit in front of the horse and all those other metaphors. Anyway, normally these would all be worked out at the DRB level, all the conditions would be set, then it comes to the select board for approval.
I tell you, thank you.
We've got a select board meeting in the middle of it while the DRB is still deliberating, so it'd be inappropriate for us to make a decision before they come up with their recommendations and their conditions. That's all it is. It's the bureaucracy of how this has to work.
I have somebody else who would like to speak.
I'll stand here so it's easier.
Hi, what's your name?
I'm Judith Strom, and I'm in a butter also.
Right.
In fact, all of my road frontage borders on Manitou Lane.
On my land, actually.
Yeah, on your land, sorry. And I just wanted to clarify, first of all, I'm all for the project, and I'm in a butter. And secondly, I just wanted to clarify that I was at the DRB meeting on Thursday.
Yes.
And after the Bristols voiced their concerns, Gordon left shortly after he voiced his, and then Jean was there for the rest of the meeting. And after we encouraged her to tell us everything that she was afraid could happen if the project went forward. And then at the end, after she heard, at the time it was only 2 people who wanted to be buried, she graciously said she thought that they should be approved. So I just wanted to add that because the letter makes it seem like that's presumptuous and that shouldn't go forward. I'm not sure if Jean changed her mind, but in the meeting she said that she very graciously said she thought we should go forward with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for
When was the
speaking.
date of that letter?
Oh, it was August 6th.
Oh, August.
Yeah, it
August
came in
6th.
today.
Yes, okay. Okay, so I think we're going to have to end this for tonight. You're going to meet with the DRB tomorrow, is that correct?
I don't think I'm part of that meeting.
Oh, you're not part
It's
of it?
internal
Okay.
deliberations.
Oh, okay.
But my motion would be to table this until the time certain.
Right.
The time certain is after the DRB issues its report and recommendations.
Okay.
And after review by the attorney.
Did you make that motion?
I did.
Okay. Okay, second. Okay, any discussion?
Does that mean it's a month later?
What does that mean, yeah, time-wise?
Okay, so what does that mean time-wise? Does that mean we have?
They have 45, DRB has 45 days, and I don't think that, that's all we can say right now.
And when do you meet again for select board?
We meet again on September 17th.
Yeah.
Gary, point of clarification?
No, you got no one in August.
We got August.
We got another one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think there are 2 levels of DRB consideration. One is the big picture, and the other was what went to the DRB chair in a note on Saturday to him. I don't know if he circulated to you, but reiterate just very briefly. Since the bylaws specify and have been approved by the board of the owner-operator of the cemetery, since that answered all of what were voiced as concerns of the DRB at the meeting, that is now law for our operation. So if you could say tomorrow, well, yeah, we think going ahead with 2, now 3 burials on those conditions, while we then spend the next 35 days, whatever the period countdown is, then that's what I was hearing might be an appropriate solution.
That was what we discussed on Thursday, yes.
So if that in fact is the case, getting to the timeline question that we were hearing from an audience member, then is it possible for the select board to say, subject to the DRB's approval, we could say yes?
We can't do anything without council. And I made a mistake, I'm sorry. Our next meeting is August 20th. Monday, August 20th at 6 p.m. here. Sorry about that.
Is there a way that another council could be consulted?
No, we have one
With
town
Rick Carroll
council.
not being available?
No, he'll be back next week. He'll be back.
Believe me, we hear you and we understand what you're asking us to do. However, there is a process. that we need to follow because we are the first here to do this in this state. So we have to make sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, that we're doing this correctly, and that means first call has to be to our attorney. We'll move as quickly as we can, and we'll try to make considerations for folks that may be in a situation where they need this facility sooner than others. But you have to give us time to make the decision based on our requirements for study deliberation about this, and the DRB, which is another regulatory board, let them do their work. And we understand it could take some time to do, but that's really where we're stuck. And we will try to make considerations for folks as you bring them to us, but we really have to go through this the right way.
Yes, I'm going to say that we have 5 more minutes with this now. I really have to move on because we have more on the agenda. Yes.
Yes, I'm Liza King, and I live in Brattleboro, and I've been involved with the meeting with the people, the Green Burial people. I guess my question, I'm a little concerned and confused about the folks who have family members who they want interred. Mm-hmm. And when is the earliest date that they might get an answer? Do they have to wait till the next select board meeting at the very earliest? Is that?
No, the DRB will be meeting tomorrow.
And after that, they could
They'll have a
possibly
recommendation.
make a provisional,
Yep.
but then it has to go to the select board again?
No, the select board will have to approve this before it's formalized at the final stage. Is that your read on the?
That's where my confusion comes in. I've never seen a DRB decision have to come before the select board.
This is, we did see a clause that said that it does have to come back to the select board.
That's where I'm confused.
Yeah,
as to where that's
we didn't
why-
write this law.
Yeah. That's
Yes,
why
ma'am.
we have to speak to our council.
Is it because it's this burial?
We have no idea why, but
Yeah.
the process is that it must end up here for final approval.
Can I ask again?
Yes. Excuse me, this is a very difficult conversation, obviously. There's very strong emotions. We have tremendous compassion to you, and we all go through this. I mean, but the important, just a minute please. The important thing is that we have to say again, and we're gonna have to end this up. We can't promise anything right now, select board can't, until we meet with our council. And the DRB legally has 45 days to come to a decision, and they could decide tomorrow, they could decide on day 20 or day 44. I can't give you any guarantee. And I understand it's a difficult situation, but that's how it is. That's the legal things that we have to follow.
My concern
yes.
is not an emotional one, but a matter of procedural clarification, because I hear you saying that as you meet tomorrow, you might then decide to give conditional approval for these 3 families.
That is
If we have
within
the
our
authority.
Yes.
We have the problem of verifying that we have the authority to give that conditional approval. I mean, we have the same, we have legal constraints, and as much as we might want to do it, we may not have that authority. So we have to determine first, I mean, that to me is a very serious thing. We'd have to verify that we have that authority. We're going to have another situation like the people were talking about where they're alleging an illegal burial.
Yes.
Okay, I can.
Hi, is there anybody that wants to volunteer? It's a big volunteer, and the select board and the DRB, is that right?
Yes.
To meet with a lawyer next week.
Tomorrow.
Oh, no, they're coming back. They're coming back. And now, when the lawyer comes back.
We're constrained by open meeting laws, so none of us can do a one-on-one meeting with another, or 3 of us together in the same room means one of us has to go out without dinner and leave the restaurant.
Yeah, and if we're not careful, we're going to have a DRB meeting here tonight with only 2 people.
Right.
That's not fair to the rest of the DRB. I think
We have rules and regulations.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know what they were, and how you meet with the lawyer, so that's gonna be another, well, that'll be neat time.
Well, Shannon will be taking care of it. She is our administrative assistant. The lawyer is not available this week. He will be here next Monday.
So what I'm gonna do is email him tomorrow morning so that the minute he gets back in the office, it'll be there. And I'm also gonna call him and leave him a voicemail that says, you have an urgent email in your inbox and I need you to answer it right
Thank
away."
you.
So hopefully, you know.
Shannon, in the meantime, could you email me what you gave me in person so I could give a detailed response to what you received from Bristol?
Yes, it'll actually be a PDF because they were hand delivered, so I don't have a.
Okay.
So I'll give you a PDF of it.
You all are owed a cogent explanation in response to that, and I would like to do that in the next couple of days.
Okay, Mike would like to say
I'm
something.
just wondering, say on the 13th, the lawyer says it doesn't have to come back to the select board. You guys already met, and then you can put your decision in there.
Yep.
Right, and then I could just notify people that you do not have to meet on it.
Right.
Ultimately, the select board does have to make a decision. That's part of the statute. It's the DRB and the select board making a decision. And what I was hoping to come with tonight, and I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to say this, that if they go with a conditional approval for 3 burials, you would say on a conditional basis, based on the rules of the bylaws that the Manitou board has committed to, that the statutes are in fact, by our preliminary interpretation, enough for us to be able to do this without fault. And that's what I was hoping we could get to tonight. And I think that is possible legally, but I understand your need to have counsel with you.
This is government.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming, and we appreciate your presence here and your sharing with us, and we know it's a very complicated and a very personal subject.
Yeah, condolences to those that recently passed.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll try to get there as quickly as we can. We are sensitive.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mike.
Good idea.
Yeah, I'm not.
Cemetery reminder to drink water.
In that order, I drink water first and then get the cemetery. I mean, but I'm funny that way.
And then 10:30 is a healthy sleep time.
Oh, there you go.
Steve, you want to move up, please?
You guys need a little break? Here's a copy of all estimates and
Didn't hurt as bad as
proposals.
but you get a better meal on 65.
Summary.
Is this a copy for all of us? Copy for all of us?
No, just for the,
Oh, well then, okay, then,
just enter in the record.
yeah, and we'll give it to Shannon.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
It could be a lot simpler and less emotional.
Thank you.
Good luck with that, Steve.
Oh, yes.
Okay, Shannon, here, copies of the estimates. Everybody, any members of the public?
Question, it's like realistic, you can get budget and spread over years.
I guess I'll go stand over here. Make this as short as possible, but there's a lot of detail, and as much of the detail as you'd like that can go into it. So basically, what we've come up with, unlike the proposal we had in the fall, is a more holistic, if I should use that word, approach to dealing with the entire building, not just one section of it. And we've consulted with architects, historic preservationists, with contractors. We've had a lot of discussion over years amongst ourselves to find the best way to improve the hall, spend, be very frugal with the town's money. And we had 3 main goals, which was to improve energy efficiency, also the cost efficiency, and mitigate the moisture problem that we have in the building. So this is what we've come up with, and I've listed the various sections. The first one is to replace the boiler that's currently installed. It's old, which doesn't necessarily mean it's no good. I'm old too, according to some people. But it's just not efficient. It has it's an oil boiler. It has a power vent. Power vents, I've come to learn, can expel 35 to 40% of the heat in the boiler out the window. And so it's not very efficient. It's also undersized. It's about 120,000 BTUs. It's never been sufficient to heat the building, and it never will be. Another consideration, which is long-term, is that by 2030, all above-ground oil tanks will need to be on a concrete slab. So I know it's 12 years away, but at that point, if those tanks are still good, they'll have to be drained and moved, the slab will have to be poured, and then replaced. So what we're proposing is a propane high-efficiency boiler. This seems to be the modern way to go. And even though propane doesn't have as many BTUs as oil, when you compare the efficiency of an oil boiler versus a propane boiler, they kind of equal out the cost. But the company that we've chosen to go with, Osterman Propane, and they're in business almost 60 years. They've been mostly in Central Mass, and they're expanding into this area. They have a depot now in West Chesterfield, where we'll be serviced from. And besides, they gave us a better price on a bigger boiler than Sandry, which was another quote that we got. We've got through a courtesy to John Julian, who's a very good customer of Osterman's, because they service his grill and some of his other properties, that they're going to give us a price that's you can't beat. And I don't know if you know how propane is priced. It's called the Selkirk price. It's a depot in New York where the tankers come in and the dealers go and get their propane.
Yeah.
They're willing to give us a price of Selkirk plus 40 cents, which is remarkably low price. John gets 35 cents. He buys over, 10,000 gallons? And even they know that we're not going to buy anywhere near that. But they're still, as a courtesy to John and to the town, they'll give us Selkirk plus 40, which is probably the cheapest fuel we'd be able to get anywhere. And that will be billed to the town, to separate, and that will be in the contract, and that will be going forward. So, and they would install a plywood wall in the boiler room, and then the new furnace and all the pumps, and it would be a complete new installation. Yes?
Go ahead.
Have you also considered putting in an on-demand boiler?
That's what I was saying.
They only heat up when you have to have, it doesn't have to heat itself up to maintain the core of the boiler. So you save a lot of money in propane. And are you hydronic there, or
Isn't that just for water?
No.
Oh, no?
For both. In fact, it will supply both hot water as well as all your heating hot water.
Is that considered a heat pump? That's not
No,
really a heat
it's
pump.
not a heat pump.
Yeah.
Are you hydronic?
No.
Corsair?
But I've heard, well, no, I'm, yeah, I have a boiler, hot water boiler, but I have not heard of on-demand.
Yeah.
I mean, this propane unit, as I understand it, you're not keeping you do have to maintain boiler temperature. And so, but I have on-demand hot water heaters for domestic hot water, but I don't know about on-demand.
Check out a company called Navien, Navien. They make a complete line of combined boilers, non-condensating boiler with hot water built right into it, and they are really slick as a whistle.
But it's for heating, not just for hot water.
No,
It
hot
does
water
both.
comes off of
It
it.
can do both of them. Yeah.
I have a boiler that has hot water coming off of it.
Oh, yeah, that I know. But you're saying, so I don't understand, it's an on-demand heat?
Yes. So you've got a thermostat set.
Yeah.
Okay. Normally the boiler would come on every once in a while just to maintain the heat of the boiler.
Right, yeah.
Doesn't do that. It only comes on when you call for heat, exactly when you call for heat. And you can also get hot water at the same time. And you can set it up to whatever temperatures. I would encourage you to at least check it out.
Yeah,
You could save
definitely
quite a
check
bit
it
of
out.
money.
Yeah, it might.
Well, I know these particular boilers that they were talking about, and I have a few of them manufactured in Massachusetts by a company, HTP. They have special digital circulators, which are very efficient in terms of they fluctuate in terms of the demand
Yep, they step up
for
and step down.
right, exactly. So whether that addresses what you're
Yeah.
talking about,
I've
I
had
don't know.
both types. The on-demand is remarkably better.
Are they remarkably more expensive?
No, they shouldn't be remarkably more expensive. I put one in to our units. It supplies the whole building. It's a hydronic system. And it cost me about, total, with all the plumbing, everything that had to go with it, which I'm not sure I really needed, but then again, plumbers have to have a living. It's about $8,000.
Support your plumber.
Yeah, right. Otherwise, they won't support you.
How many BTU?
How many BTUs? I'm not sure what it is. I think it's around 210 to 240.
Okay. Check, I'll give you a call. Check.
Yeah. You can come by and check it out.
I have another question. If these are just estimates, I mean, if we
No.
go out to bid,
No, these
we
have been
have to go
out
out
to
to bid with this, right?
Yeah,
Correct?
These have been out to bid.
These have been out to
These
bid.
have been out to
Yeah.
bid.
Mhm.
And did
They've all been out to bid except the window repair.
Well,
Wait a minute, I
Williamsville,
can't, there's one person at a time speaking, I'm sorry. 'cause-
Williamsville handles their own estimating and approvals for things. They have a budget
For the village.
for Williamsville Town Hall or Williamsville Hall.
Oh.
They have their own budget and they draw off of that and they just bring us the numbers and thank goodness they do. Because we could never keep up with that building otherwise.
So each of these have been put out to bid?
Yeah, in that packet I gave to Shannon, there's 2 bids for each part of these components. Okay. Except for the window repair, the $1,950.
Who approves the bids, I guess is the question.
Who what?
Who approves the bids?
The whole committee did.
Who's
Yeah,
the
the whole
like-
committee.
We have.
So that's just something that happens.
Yes.
But that's
They're
also
delegated.
why,
Delegated to do that.
right. But that's also why you have copies, so you could review them.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just have
And
this one
take-
paper,
Sure,
that's all.
okay. Yeah, well, the bids are in Shannon's hands.
I'm new, so I
Yeah.
have
Oh,
a
sure.
lot of
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. No, this is the way we've done
And
things.
you guys approve it.
Yeah,
We
yeah, you have to
just-
approve it. So,
Could,
Yeah.
wait, Steve, Chris,
oh, sorry.
Now, on the heat, one of the problems with that hall is the plumbing is not, the pipes are not large enough for the volume of water that's needed. That's one reason it doesn't work good too.
Right.
They have to be bigger pipes in there, so you have your volume of water.
Right, but part of the problem was the boiler never generated enough heat.
I understand that.
And the
but
pumps
still,
were
you're
inadequate.
pumping,
Yeah.
you're going long distances,
Right,
and real small doesn't work.
right. I mean, we're not trying to say that this is the be-all and end-all. You know, the ideal would be to rip out the baseboards and put in bigger ones that are suitable to a commercial building. Unfortunately, when this was installed, I think it was 19 years ago, it just wasn't adequate. The boiler wasn't adequate, the pipes weren't adequate, the baseboards weren't adequate. What we're attempting to do in a cost-efficient way is to improve things as much as we can. So we're gonna have more heat, and along with that, we're gonna make the building more efficient. So I think we're all gonna be warmer, and we're gonna spend less money generating the heat that we do, but that we will. So that's, you want to talk about this more, or should I go on to the next?
I have just one more question,
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How much, how often is that building used percentage-wise through the year? 30%, 40%, 50%?
You mean on a daily basis?
Overall,
Overall? 10%?
for the year?
Yeah, but it's close for 5 months.
Yeah. For 9 months it's closed down?
5 months.
5 months, okay.
And many people in town have always said, and continue to say, that if the building was open in the winter, they would use it more. Because in the winter is when people would like to have the hall available for events, to get out of the house. And also, if it was open year-round, I think we could have more programs that were on a continual basis. And so that would generate more use. I will say, you know, I would take a guess, Shannon, you think I'm right? I'm saying like maybe, well, with the Rock River Players, maybe it's a little higher because they have their rehearsals.
Right.
But anytime somebody uses it, they're just thrilled out of their minds that it's there and they have this facility. So, okay,
Yeah.
so for the reasons that I outlined, we decided to go with Osterman. And so now, before they can put the boiler in, we have to repair the boiler room. Because the boiler room has taken quite a beating from all the moisture and water damage that it's incurred over the years. So we got a couple of quotes from two local carpenters, Clark Todd in Williamsville and Aaron Betts. They're both very good and very reasonable and very talented carpenters. And we decided to go with Clark Todd because he's available. Aaron won't be able to do the work. There's, you know, it's apples and oranges. They're both really good. What Clark is proposing is to take the wall that faces the oil tanks and put at least the bottom 3 or 4 feet, use pressure treated plywood instead of the sheetrock that's there.
That's sitting on soil right now, right?
No, it's on a concrete slab.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It looks like soil because of all the silt that's washed over the floor. But it's
But it's all
actually,
rotted out.
yes, right. And he would replace the studs with pressure treated studs. He'd also put in a swale in front of it so that any water that might come running down will be, you know, will run down the center of the cellar and not enter that
That'd
room.
be really swell.
Yeah, yeah. And he would also take out a lot. There's a lot of rotten sheetrock inside, you know, mildew. He would take that out, replace it with 5/8, because that's code, and then he would tape it and paint it with, you know, like bathroom paint to give it some moisture and mildew protection. So that's the job that he would do. His price came in at $2803.89. Then we come to the biggest expense of all, which is insulating the cellar ceiling. We had 2 bids, one from Foreman and one from Builders Installed Products. They're builders. We decided on Builders because they're very reputable, they do good work, and their prices are lower. We all know about Foreman. They do good work, but we also know they're probably the most expensive insulator anywhere. I don't know, anywhere, but certainly in our area. And we're confident that Builders will do a good job. Why do we want to insulate the ceiling? You know, you don't get a great amount of insulation value by insulating the cellar ceiling. You get about 10%. The main reason is to eliminate some of the moisture that migrates up through the building. And that's a problem in the building, and that will give us a real boost of eliminating some of that moisture and the mildew that results from it. And because the walls of the cellar are open, they're not finished, and the back end of the building is, you know, open, that a lot of the moisture that is there can go out, you know, through the walls and through the back. If that doesn't, I mean, it will definitely help. If that is not the complete solution, the next step would be to sort of clear out the cellar and then lay down some heavy plastic and then put some, you know, gravel or something on top to protect the plastic. And usually they wrap it up the side a bit of the walls, and that will, you know, further help. And I have one other solution. But so by doing the ceiling, we will, you know, mitigate the moisture problem, and it will give us some insulation value as well. The one thing we're not going to insulate are the walls. The walls account for about 35% of the heat loss in a building. But why don't we want to do that? I look at it as if, because we're doing the cellar ceiling, we've done the attic, we've tightened up the doors and some of the windows, and part of this plan is to do the rest of the windows, we're going to have a 65% energy efficient building instead of a 0%. So we really, you know, will have made some really big improvements. But why not insulate the walls? The walls are where the moisture gets caught. We care about the building. It's a beautiful old building. We want it to last. So we don't want, you know, everyone I've ever talked to said, don't insulate the walls in that building. Whatever moisture does come up will go out through the walls. And so that will help to maintain and save the building. So that's part of the plan.
Do you have dehumidifiers running or anything?
We might have to put some in the cellar.
And what are the months that it's closed?
November, December, January, and February.
So the winter?
Yes.
And would the furnace be running during the winter to keep that building somewhat warm?
Well, that's the point at the end of all this presentation. I'll give you a heads up, is to possibly keep it open. If not through the whole winter, then at least maybe just have it closed for 3 months. But I think with the energy efficiency and the cost we're going to get from this new system, it might be cheaper to keep it going than to pay someone to go in and drain the pipes and then start everything up again. And it'll certainly be better for the building.
Right.
And you know, there's 4 zones in the building. The bathrooms, the kitchen, the hall upstairs, and the lower level. And when the building isn't used, the hall, the main hall, the lower level, the dining hall, the room next to it, you know, they're just heated to 40 degrees. The bathrooms and the kitchen, you know, keep it 45, 50, just to keep the pipes from freezing. So I think with the new system, we'll be able to afford to keep it going and give people the opportunity to, you know, use the hall in the winter.
Provide senior meals.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. Okay. Any other questions on that? Seal? Okay. Next is the main floor window repair. Last fall, we got Tom McLaughlin. He came in and he repaired the windows on the lower level. And what he does is he weather strips them. He makes sure they can go up and down. He repairs the, you know, the sash weights, and he makes them weather tight. They don't rattle. They don't leak air. He's very good at what he does, and we only have his bid because, as far as we know, he's the only person in this area who does that work. There's someone up north, but I'm not sure who she is. But if, like last year, he did the lower windows. Now he's going to do all the upper windows. We paid for his work out of the hall donation fund, which meant we didn't need more than one bid. So we could do the same thing this year. As you'll see at the bottom of the page, we have enough money to cover his bill in the donation fund. And he does a great job. So he would come in, there's 11 windows upstairs, and he would do them all. And what we thought would be the best approach is to only fix the lower sash. Make those go up and down and lock, because the upper sash are just, you know, they're out of the way. I don't think they've ever been moved. So, and he would caulk them with a clear caulk to make sure they're weather tight and they don't rattle. So that's what he would do for that money. The last part is cellular shades. I went online and I got some quotes from a couple companies that have great reviews. And to do all the windows, except for the one in the kitchen next to the stove, which obviously is not a good idea, we would put light filtering shades downstairs. All of them, they would be cordless, so that would be nice. And so this price is for all the shades upstairs, in the main hall, and a couple other places where light will infiltrate. We decided to go with blackout shades, so when there's theater productions, movies, lectures, whatever, we could easily, you know, darken the hall. So there's 8 of the windows in that category, and there's 3 that doesn't matter, like in the fire stairway and one in the women's room. So they're a little cheaper. So we went 3 light filtering, 8 blackout shades. And those would have a continuous loop. So, because they're too tall to use. Yeah, but the chain is about, you know, 2/3 of the way up. So, and it goes around a little pulley. So it won't get in the way and won't create a hassle. So that came to, the best price I got was $2,025.19. So our total for these projects is $33,774.08, not non-consequential amount of money. Then, if you look at what money is available, in the capital expense fund, there's $35,875.27. In the donation fund, we have $4,050.09 for a total of almost $39,925.36. So the money is available if you choose to spend it. And as I say, we would be happy to take the window repair out of the hall money, so we don't have to deal with getting another quote. And so only $31,000 would come from the capital expense, and it would still leave a balance of approximately $4,000. And we would still have $2,000 in the donation fund. We need some things for the kitchen, and so the money, you know, will be spent. One thing I'd like to add, you know, the board's been very generous about giving money to the hall. Here's the time that comes to maybe spend it. One thing is if we get an approval quickly, we could actually get this done before winter. Because I got pretty much everyone lined up for September, October, which would be just an amazing thing. One other project to think about long-term, and will also help with the moisture problem, is we have to deal with the wall in the kitchen. That's the foundation wall. You know, I don't know if you're familiar, but you know, the building is built into the slope, and that wall has a foundation, concrete foundation, and it's the back of the kitchen and the utility room and the passageway to the utility room. That just needs attention. Chris is nodding his head, he knows. And there's a chimney, I guess the old chimney from the kitchen stove. I don't know why else it's there. Some of the plaster around it is falling off, some of it's already falling off. So I think if there's any money left, maybe we could, you know, approach that, but we haven't looked into that. But that would help a lot with the moisture. But that's for another day. Just
Chris.
The chimney, that's where when that had wood heat in it. I remember when it had wood heat in it. So I love the wood.
I remember first, I think when it first came.
Anyway,
that big wood
now
stove.
that's not my big question. That's for just information. On what is it gonna have for a propane tank?
Oh.
Where are you gonna put it?
Good question.
Yeah, they're gonna put them, they're gonna be 4 tanks right next to, well, right in the same spot where the one is present. They can't put in a big, you know, what's called a submarine tank, because it's too close to a building. So they give us 4 100-pound tanks right in that.
And how are they gonna fill them in the winter?
125s, yeah.
How are they gonna fill them in the winter if you can't get down over that?
Well, the consultant, he came, he looked at the stairs coming down, and he said, yeah, we can do it. He has a 100-foot hose. We'll just have to earn his money that
That
day.
was just my question, that's
Yeah.
all.
Oh, no, yeah, we questioned it too, because you look at the road and you look at the tank and you go, you said, yeah, he said, sometimes, you know, that's what you have to do. So he didn't see it as being any kind of problem. You know,
Sounds good to me.
that's our presentation. Could, I don't know if you're willing to say yes, go ahead with the idea of checking out this other kind of boiler and, you know, sending you the information about it, or you want to deliberate, or you ready to give us a vote? Because I'll start calling
I
people.
mean, what I would do is, if they wanna look into that boiler that Gary's looking at,
Yeah.
look at that, but I'd say you get the money there for thing, I'd take it out of the capital fund.
Mhm.
Comes in under what we've already got, leave the other donation alone,
Oh, thank you.
and then keep that for other things that you used in the hall, or maybe even this winter when it comes time, if you wanna keep it open, we could use that for some
Yeah.
gas and stuff.
Right, yeah, we'd be
So we
happy
got
to do that.
35,000 in the capital fund, and like I said, what they've done over the last few years since I've been on, they've done a good job at it.
Excellent job.
And plus, you know, I mean, they had a good event over this weekend. I like to see that place used and
Yeah. Yeah, it's
things
wonderful.
happen there. That's a
I
good-
would love to see you start as soon as possible.
No.
It's my opinion.
And I don't think
Chris?
Osterman was necessarily honed in on HTP boilers. I mean, if, you
Well,
know.
they're good. No
Yeah,
question about it.
but I mean.
This is a new technology.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
really catching on.
I'll give Steve.
And you're welcome to
Simons-
come by my house and take a look at it.
Yeah, I'll give him a call and see what he knows about it.
Good.
The only reason I put the window repair under the donation fund is because we only have the one bid. But if you're happy to roll it all together under the capital expense fund, we can go with that, and we can certainly, you know, have improvements and additions to the hall to come out of our money.
Mike, you want to make a motion?
I already did. It's
I'll
a second.
second it.
I mean, for one thing, it's under $2,000, so I mean,
You second?
Oh, right, yeah.
Any discussion? Any further discussion?
I think that what the Williamsville Hall Committee does is very admirable. We wouldn't
Absolutely.
be without them.
Absolutely.
But-
And I congratulate you that you keep working on it so hard. and you're
We've
just-
been working on it forever.
I know.
It's because of Myra.
I was
Myra.
there a long time ago.
I
Myra-
know, it's just amazing.
Myra keeps pushing us along.
It's a little scary down in the basement.
Oh, yeah, that cellar, have you been down there?
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
little scary.
30 years, okay.
Yeah.
As you said, Steve, we keep appropriating your money, so you can spend it.
Yeah.
We keep appropriating your money, but we don't expect you to spend it.
Good.
The day of reckoning has arrived.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
Wait, we need to vote.
They need to vote.
We need to
They're waiting for the
vote.
vote.
All those in favor of supporting the committee to start work on the Williamsville Hall, so hopefully it'll be done by winter, as you would like it to be, please say aye.
Well, you want to say the one comes out of the budget, the capital, and leave the other one alone
Right.
for it.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
You want to say that?
That's what I did in my motion.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wrote it down that way.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, anybody? Okay, the ayes
Yeah.
have it.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Dan.
Thank you.
Hallelujah.
We're entering budget time, not that far away. So be thinking about what you want to do next year.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Even more? Wow.
Well, there's the
Thank you
hot
so
tub.
much.
Thank you, folks.
The hot tub.
Oh, yeah, right.
The ice cream.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and does it need to be a separate motion about keeping the hall open if we get this work done?
No, let's leave that, let's leave that be for now.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Myra. Thank you, Steve.
Nice to see you.
Have a good evening.
Take care.
Walt, thank you. Are you leaving?
No, just wanted to compliment your,
Okay, yeah, well, I have one other thing to say. And that's sort of part of, it's not correspondence, but it was a communication that I got, and it's very short, from Richard Merrick today. He called me, and he just wanted to update me on the work that's being done up in Newfane Common. He and Laura Baker and Barbara have been working. Richard has been up there digging and making a pathway in the woods. He said it was like a jungle, and he's made an 8-foot wide pathway.
Wow.
Not all the way through, but it's they've done quite a bit already. Gary Katz and Barbara are working on making the new signage, and she'll be doing the calligraphy or printing on it. And that's it. I mean, they're just working hard. And if anybody knows somebody or wants to volunteer their time, they are willing. And you had an idea, was it you, Shelley, about the Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, or somebody said that the other day, that we could find groups of kids.
Yeah, but I thought I was the liaison for the board, but I guess they're contacting you directly, so. No, really.
Excuse me,
I
he just called me. I have no idea.
So.
I am not a liaison.
I don't
for this.
know. I guess at this point, I just would resign myself from being the contact person, and I just don't really have time to do that anyways, so.
I'm not the liaison person.
Okay.
He called me, and I answered the phone, and he told me what was going on, and I said, okay, I'll let the board know.
Okay. No, I don't have anything to add to it.
Okay. So the next is pay orders, and that's the end of our meeting tonight. Have a good night, everybody, and thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you, Jan, for all your help tonight.